spotlight is firmly on the evolution of the Mayor's programme, where we've come from, where we're heading, and what the next phase of progress looks like. And pleasingly, we know that the numbers show that all the work, all the investment, and all the tinkering we've done with the programme has moved us firmly, really in the right direction. The National Hunt Mare population has grown steadily year on year. We now have around about 1,300 mares in training, close to a quarter of the entire job population. It was a big step forward, especially from a decade ago, and I think importantly we'll hear exactly where this whole programme began and how it got to this point. And we are in very capable hands, so delighted that we've got people here this morning who championed this programme for so many years, and a few I know who are always ready to defend the importance of the programme, especially keeping the major races at the major festivals when that conversation inevitably comes around at particular points of the year. But we're coming to the end of 2025, so it's the perfect time to take stock and to ask what's the current state of play, what have we actually achieved, and what's next on the Mayor's roadmap. So today's lineup on the panel is built to tackle exactly that. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to our panellists: Stu Middleton, BHA Racing Operations Manager; Simon Cox, Chair of the TBA National Hunt Committee; and Colm, Donlon, TBA Trustee. And later on, there will be the opportunity for questions. And if you have something that you want to ask, please put your hand up, and we'll just make it very conversational. So we'll take questions as and when you've got one. We've also got Jamie Snowden appearing via Zoom. Hopefully technology will work for us, as it will be really important to hear from him and to dig into how the Mayor's programme really works in day-to-day life in yards and races, and obviously at the sales, what's working from his perspective and what's coming next. So without further ado, to bring us up to speed on an overview of the evolution of the Mayor's programme, Stu Middleton, BHA Racing Operations Manager.
Well, thank you, Jess. Morning, everyone. So I'm here this morning to just talk to you about the Mayor's programme, about how it's evolving and where we are at the moment and where we've got to. I'm just going to start here with a slide. This was actually a slide I ended on when I spoke to this forum. Some of you may have been there at Cheltenham back in 2019. This is the final slide, and up here you'll see at the top we said here that we wanted over the next 5 years for the target percentage of the overall jump racing horses in training to be 25% mares and 30% in 2030. I can remember seeing stony silence and some raised eyebrows, and even amongst our own team before I went, there were people saying, you really shouldn't say that because it's not achievable. Now, it may have been fanciful, but we are almost there. You know, and more than anything really, it was a statement of intent. You know, the fact that if you look here, we've got, you can see this is the overall horse population. I don't know if this works, I might turn the whole thing off. Do you know which one is the... No, okay, that's not good. This last column here is 2025, and for those of you at the back there, we've got, it's 75.8% of the population are geldings and colts, and 24.2% are fillies and mares. So we're nearly almost there, and the column down, the table on the right hand side here gives you the overall numbers. What's, as I say, the statements of intent really, just to give people assurances that we are committed to the Mayor's programme, to its evolution and to its continuation, and we continue to support that. You'll see here the jump horses in training down the right hand side. Again, for those of you who can't see that, we ignore 2020 because obviously that was COVID. 2021 we hit our peak there of 6,923, and we're coming back down towards 6,000. So horses in training are falling. So the fact that we're sort of still able to sustain this mare's population is really good news, and it's testament really to everyone's efforts and to the commitment that everybody's put and the faith that people have put in the programme. Just to give you a snapshot of the total prize fund that mares are racing for now. So this is the overall programme, this isn't just the black type programme, but you can see that sort of every 5 years we're going up. So we're at 5.62 million now for prize money for mares only races. And the great thing here is at the bottom, we've got the chases there in that sort of maroon box. That's 1.41 million. So that's the first time that prize money for mares chases has gone over £1 million. So this is the black type programme so far. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but and most of you know this, but I think it is important to remember this sort of journey that we've been on with it, and the milestones along the way, because I think a lot of people sort of forget and think, oh, things are stagnated and you're not really going anywhere. But you know, way back in 2007 when we introduced those first three weight for age listed races and the first 3 Grade 2 weight for age races. You know, that was a really hard sell. Most of our own committees weren't with us on that. The only committee that was with us was the TBA. And David Nicholson, funnily enough, David Nicholson turned up to my offices one day in London and was like, "Stuart, you're right, they're wrong, keep going." And it was sad, and actually by the time the race came around, David had passed away, but then Cheltenham named it after him. I don't know if they knew his involvement. I mean, knowing David, I imagine he probably told a lot of people exactly what he thought. But anyway, he was a great supporter of it, and it was quite a special moment on the day of the first race to sort of to see it going off and hearing his name called out of it. And the programme on the back of that really continued to grow. 2015 also we introduced a rule requiring racecourses to run one mares race for every 3 days racing. This, again, difficult to get over the line, but key to ensuring that we've got a sustainable mares programme, allowing people the faith to put horses in training. We would like to push that further. We'd like to go to every 2 days now. We've had a first attempt. Most racecourses are way over that. I think it's all bar 4 racecourses, and it's only a way of shoring up the programme, but we will have another stab at that. And then moving on to finally, in 2023, we had a review of the mares pattern to see where we were now that we've sort of put everything together. I often liken the mares black type programme to sort of a house that's been extended too many times. It just had bolt-ons all over the place, and I think if we'd known that we were going to end up with 37 races at the outset, we might have done things a lot differently. You know, we get the races agreed, we offer them out to racecourses to apply in the time slots that we want, and then you go with the best option. But what it has meant is we just ended up with races coming in over the top and not necessarily in the right order. So there was a small group of us from the Jump Pattern Committee. Simon was part of that, and we went through and we had a few meetings, and we just tried to work out what we could do better and just optimise the whole of the mares black type programme. So these were the things that came out of that meeting in 2023. So the early season Kempton listed race that's coming up on Monday, that changed its distance from 3 miles to 2 miles 5. It was pointed out, Harry Fry was key to all of this work as well, and Harry said, look, it's just a bit odd that you're starting with a 3-mile race and then your 2.5-mile races at Sandown in January. So we chopped that race back to 2.5. Initially there was a view to try and swap the distances over, and Sandown really wanted to keep their race at 2.5, and I think we all thought Sandown in January 3 miles might be a bit of a slog, so we kept both races, and we took the opportunity to add a new race in at Doncaster in December at 3 miles. Equally, one of the things that came up, Ascot's Warfield and Doncaster's Yorkshire Rose Grade 2 mares hurdles, they swapped distances basically, so they're in the same slot, and it just made sense for both of their areas of the pattern to have the 2-mile and the 3-mile race. Another thing that was pointed out that we've become increasingly aware of over the years was that the two-mile opportunities were both in the north. Other than Lady Buttons, there haven't been any 2-mile mares in the north for a long time, so we took the opportunity to get one down at Ascot. Repositioning of several mares listed chases, 2.5 miles and 3 miles. So we spread those out. So you'll have noticed the Houghton at Carlisle over 2.5 miles. That's already been and gone. It was a great race. That wouldn't have happened so far. We wouldn't have even started the overall mares programme yet. And the idea there was, I think, when we set out with the mares chases, most horses stuck to their lane a bit more. You know, you do 2.5 milers run over 2.5, 3 milers run over 3. That's changed significantly, particularly in the last 5 years, with horses, just being versatile in trip trainers and changing plans at the last minute. So we wanted to spread the races out so that actually, there's at least 3 weeks between each one, ideally. So if you've got a mare that is versatile and quite robust, you can run in a number of these races and swap trips. What else have we got here? The conversion of the EBF Mares Chase, no longer sponsored by the EBF, and that's now a Premier Handicap from Grade 2 at Cheltenham in April. We've got a new 2-mile listed novice chase at Exeter in February. That was won by Only by Night this year, who went on to be second in the Arkle, so a brilliant start for that race. Sadly trained in Ireland, but we can't have everything for year 1, and hopefully we'll get a British runner this year, winner this year. And a new 3-mile listed hurdle at Kelso in March. So there was just a gap for 3 milers that tailed off. Kelso the racecourse that threw that out in the ring and had the money to commit to it. And that's on a Saturday fixture as well, which is quite important for us. So that takes the total number of black type races now to 37. This is just a breakdown here of where they are amongst the mares, the chases, the hurdles and bumpers. And yeah, 37 races, as I say there, grade 1s, the one grade 1, the David Nicholson, mostly grade 2s and the 2 Premier Handicaps, or grade 3s as we call them, and the majority listed races. Another area that we would like to expand going forward would be the chases now that we are seeing greater quality in those. You know, we've only got the one grade 2, which is at Cheltenham, and the remainder of the races are listed races. And ideally, we'd get a couple of those up to grade 2 as well. Particularly the Doncaster race generally performs very strongly and would probably warrant going up to grade 2 in due course. Career length. This slide is really interesting, and it's key for us. This is probably the part where race planners and breeders deviate slightly, but you know there's got to be a little bit of give and take. So this shows the number of mares that stay in training this season after they've won their black type. And we get why it's important for you guys. You've got your black type, you want to get her back to the paddocks, you want to start breeding from her. Totally get that. If we could just ask you to hang on for one more year in some instances, particularly the ones that are really highly rated and performing at that top level. If we could just have another year of them racing, that would be ideal, because the more that we can keep these races competitive and encourage racecourses to sustain the programme and stick with them, the better. But that really is going in the right direction year on year, so we're really pleased with that. And here you can see the volume. This is the overall programme now, so this is no longer the black type races. For those at the back there, this is the volume of races by sex, programmed by season. So starting there in 2004-2005, 4% of the programme were mares races back then. Whereas now, 2024-25 season, 12% of the races are mares only races, which is a great growth, and you can see the numbers down the side there. 2005 it was 155 races, whereas now we're up to 437. So it's a big increase. What's even more pleasing of that is that within there, 22-23 there was a big race volume reduction exercise. Some of you may remember, but we had to remove 300 races from the jump programme. Under 50 of those were mares races, so we managed to sustain them. Racecourses were happy to stay with them, and that's one of the other encouraging things really is James here from Newcastle. But racecourses these days, when we suggest changing a race to a mares race, so every programme book we're sort of changing about 30% of the programme and making suggestions to racecourses. Once upon a time, you'd get a, oh really, who's going to run in it, etc. Racecourses don't bat an eyelid now, but most of them don't even query it if we suggest them turning a race into a mares race. So that just shows again how things have moved on and moved forward. Volume of mares races by jump type. Oh, here we go. Right, I know where I am. So yeah, this is just giving you the breakdown of the different race types: chase, bumper, and hurdle within the growth in the programme. So of that 437, at the moment we've got 56 bumpers, 303 hurdles, and 77 chases. Bumpers in particular, the GBV, the bonus has been brilliant, and we're finding. We get regular calls from people saying, I need a mares bumper, I've got to go for the bonus, which is great news. But it's allowed us to expand. We've actually cut, even though the numbers look like they've come down slightly, we've cut bumpers significantly in the last 3 years. Average field sizes, most of you will remember sort of 10 years ago, you'd get 20, 18, 16 runners in a bumper, and we've got down to the point where we were getting 4, 5, 6, which just wasn't sustainable. So we've cut the numbers a lot. But the actual percentage of them that are now mares races is a lot higher, and that's all down to the bonus as far as we can see, because we do keep getting calls for that. I'll come on to the chases actually at the end, so I'll just move on from there. Average field sizes, I'm not going to over this too much, but you can see that historically when we have fewer mares races, the average field size was higher, as you'd expect. as I've talked about in the presentation, we've had this big increase in the mares programme, yet the average field size has pretty much stayed par with the all-sex races, which is really encouraging and just allows us to continue to programme the races and get the support of the racecourses, as I said. And finally, sorry, I thought this screen was going to be a lot bigger, so I'll try and summarise what's on it. But basically, I just wanted to touch on something that's been raised by a couple of trainers recently, which is the changes to the Mayor's Chase programme overall, not the pattern that's occurred over the last few years. So historically we had sort of a three-tier system, if you like. So if you had a mare going chasing, so she's a novice, she can run in mares chases, mares novice handicap chases, novice handicap chases, as well as the novice weight for age races, which is good enough. What it meant was we were just spreading ourselves really thinly. We were trying to get a race programme off the ground with racecourses, trying to provide a mares chase system and a mares novice handicap chase system. And for whatever reason, we just kept hitting 4 runners. 4 seems to be the magic field size in all of these races, and we just thought this is unsustainable. Most racecourses are going to turn around to us and say, I can't keep running a 4-runner race, can you change that? So what we decided to do was to cut those 3 options down to 2 and say, you've got a mare who's going novice chasing, she can run in novice handicap company or mares handicap company. You've got the choice, but we're taking out that middle option. What it has allowed us to do here, let me just see. So it's allowed us to provide a more comprehensive and sustainable programme. The field sizes have increased now, which has given racecourses the faith to run the Mayor's Chase programme. But at the same time, what we can see, there's a tiny little table here. I can't even put my little light on it. But anyway, it shows you the competitiveness, basically, of novices in the Open Mares company. They're actually performing better than they should, and the Open Mares perform less well, shall we say. And they're making up 75% of the runners in all mares chases now, and winning more than their fair share. And you would expect that to a certain extent. Obviously, they're going over fences for the first time. They're progressive. They may be on a low mark anyway, even if they'd stayed over hurdles. But they do win more than their fair share, so they're more than competitive in that sphere. So just ending on the final slide here, just what next really. So these are a couple of things that we would like to focus on going forward. Return to some of the weight for age mares beginners chases if we can. It won't have escaped anyone that we've gone back to having a largely weight for age based novice chase system this year. Been a few bumps in the road with the ground, but we're still really committed to that, and we still think it's the right thing to do. We've been really pleased with the strength of the entries, and when the ground is right, you get races like Exeter on Monday and the Lambert one. So hopefully, if things continue to go in the right direction with that, we would like to just have a few mares chases as well, just for the better mares to be able to get going amongst their own sex. As I touched on, adjust the rules requirements for the number of mares races that racecourses have to run, so expanding that and just again future-proofing the programme going forward if we can. Aim to increase the number of Grade 2 mares chases that I've touched on, and then finally continue to aim for this 30% horses by 2030, which again probably sounds ridiculous, but we nearly got there once, so I'll come back in 5 years and we'll see if we've done it again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stu. And if there are any questions, we've got a question. Yes. Question.
Stuart, do you think too many black type races are slightly degrading the black type mare? We can potentially get slightly degrading process of having too many black type races. How do we compare the British black type races compared to the Irish calendar as well?
In terms of how we assess them?
Well, yeah, and how many races do we hold for the black type races comparable to the Irish section?
And to Ireland. I think it's more a case of what I would say is if you looked at the percentage of the mares black type programme in Ireland is 10% of their pattern, which is ours is nowhere near that. So I think they've certainly flooded theirs. I don't want it to turn into a competition between us and Ireland really, but as far as we're concerned, we believe we are still at that point of let's provide the opportunities and get the horses to come. You know, there's a very robust way that we assess the races, which is on their ratings. The highest four rated runners in each race. And at the moment, I'll be honest, a couple of the races aren't achieving that, but there's
So
a
what
moratorium
would the
on
average
downgrades.
rating be at the moment, would you say, of a hurdler?
The average of a hurdler.
Yeah.
What the median is 105. Jack, help me out.
Yeah.
105, 102,
We'll have a look,
something
Stu.
like
We'll have
that.
a look.
I haven't looked at that for a while.
So I think they're important figures for us breeders to go on future prospects of breeding off these mares as well as selling the stock. Black type is great, but if it doesn't mean anything, then it's not necessarily going to help our industry if we're not providing quality there all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are open-minded to having a conversation about black type out on ratings and quality as opposed to achieving a position in a race. Because as you say, you can do that if you can.
And Jess, I would add to that, there's actually quite a big gap between, let's call it 110, 120 and black type.
Yeah.
And you will see from some of the numbers that I have later on, we actually have a big hole there to fill, because actually we don't necessarily need to get to black type, but if we can increase the number of 110, 120 plus
Yeah, that's more
progeny, that is actually far more important to us.
And we do review the quality of the races, so there's a process.
Sorry, a bit quiet down the back here.
Sorry, Robert, sorry. I'm a bit softly spoken, so please shout at me if I'm not clear. We do have a process for reviewing the quality of the races at the Jumps Panel Committee, so we wouldn't long term allow a race to underperform, constantly have low quality runners and retain the pattern. So that there is a process to make sure that there is a quality control on the black type.
And I think it's probably important as well if we're looking at a comparison to Irish racing. Obviously they've got loads more mares, so they're going to have more listed races. So the percentage of races to horses, maybe that ratio, it would be interesting to see where that is comparable to English racing and Irish racing. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can provide that.
I mean, I think your basic point, Jess, which is 100% right, we've got to have quantity and quality.
Yeah.
Right, we can't just drive at quantity and then hope that fixes everything, because it doesn't. And so a lot of what we need to do is ensure that we maintain our sort of programme and our breeding brace, but make sure we're also nudging it towards quality as well. Yeah, we've got to do both. You're spot on. Robert?
The size of the screen, as was alluded to, doesn't do credit to those very interesting slides. Could you please send them out to us, because I can't read them from here.
Yes.
Even with binoculars, I'm not sure I can read them.
Yeah, sorry.
Make sure they're sent out. I think we've just already touched on the premise of our next topic, which is obviously how this is very much important to breeders. The race programme being one part of it, but what does this mean for breeders? And to discuss that and the TBA's role, I'll introduce Simon Cox.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all here. I've got about 20 minutes. I just wanted to talk to you about the things that we are doing as a national hunt sector within the TBA. Obviously, the TBA does lots of stuff, whether it's veterinary or flat, but today I thought it'd be more interesting just to talk to you about the national hunt activities we're undertaking. The first thing which I wanted to talk you through was this slide, because what we have to do, I think, as a TBA is continue to engage with, influence, action all of the people that are in the racing and breeding system. Fundamentally, we have to try and get money into British breeding, and we have to try and make sure that the programmes that we're working with stewards, etc., the breeding base, the quality of the mares, the amount of stallions, it all has to add up and maintain and grow our industry. And we all understand that our industry is under pressure. So what we've tried to come up with is something that where we can take out to other stakeholders a model that we can describe how the activities that we're trying to support in the national hunt sector work together and make sense. So I'm going to try and make sense of this model for you, and hopefully I can pull it off. So you can jump into this model at any point. And now I'm a bit worried you can't see it, so I'm going to have to talk you through it, okay? So
There are some chairs up at the front.
in the top right-hand corner, and I said you can jump into this model at any point, but in the top right-hand corner it says elite mares. One of the things that we are very keen to continue is to ensure that there is support for the number and quality of mares in this country. And the Elite Mare scheme is designed to ensure that we do just that. High quality, high numbers of good mares in this country. If you have those good mares, it becomes so much easier to stand a stallion in this country because you've got enough mares to service, and you know if you're servicing good mares, you've got a chance of making good progeny, which will build the reputation of your stallion. So if you start with good mares, you've got a much better chance of getting good stallions to stand in this country if you've got good mares. If you've got good stallions and good mares, I know this isn't the most amazing reveal, but you put those two things together, you're likely to get some good foals and some good stock, okay? So you increase both the number and the quality of your progeny, which is here. And if you've got a lot of good progeny here in Britain, on British farms, going through British sales houses, there is a greater chance of British owners, trainers, getting their hands on them. I think we've all seen over the last, probably 5 to 10 years in particular, the sort of feeding frenzy that goes on every time, a French bumper winner crosses the line, okay? What we need in this country is to establish a reputation for our stock, but if there are horses of great quality here under our noses, whether it's owners or trainers, and we can get those owners and trainers to be interested in those horses, then we've got a chance of putting those on the racecourse and those high quality individuals performing. That generates greater racing success, which is this bit here, and the greater the racing success of our GB suffix progeny, the more demand there is for our stock. And the more demand there is, the more we're going to get paid. The more we're going to get paid, the more we can invest back into the Elite Mares band. So I know it's quite a simple model, but it's important that we have something to take out to the rest of the industry to explain why we want an Elite Mare scheme, why it's so important to keep the stallion base, why it's so important to have stock here on the ground available to British trainers, etc. Because if you don't have this, if this breaks in any way, if the demand goes down, or we haven't got good stallions in this country, or we're not successful on the racecourse, this all starts to fall apart. So we're trying to create a model of sort of virtuous circle that drives the whole industry forward. I thought it was important to explain that to you because it sort of starts to explain some of the things that we're trying to do and we're trying to lobby for and trying to campaign for. I think I've broadly explained that, but questions welcome at the end. Okay. So we obviously have a lot of things that we're trying to drive, but the thing that we still believe is critical to the success of that virtuous model is the Great British Bonus. When this started a few years ago, there was quite a lot of opposition to it, unbelievably, I think, and there was certainly not a universal acceptance of it. I think we're getting to the point now where whether you're an owner or a trainer or a breeder, the vast majority of the industry now, I believe, sees real value in this scheme. We've been very successful over the last couple of years of getting more money into the scheme. We've come up with additional ways of rewarding British bred horses and owners and breeders, and we've successfully got more money from the levy board to put into the scheme. We actually at the moment have a bit of a success problem in that actually we have been so successful over the past couple of years in getting British bred winners that the funding is actually under a lot of pressure, and we're probably going to exceed our budget this year. So we're going to have to dip into reserves, etc., etc. But I would regard that as a success problem. Yeah, there is a lot more British breds getting onto the track and winning these bonuses, and it's putting the budget under pressure. I actually think that's a good thing, providing we can continue to persuade the levy board and racing in general to keep funding us. So just a few facts for you. We have now paid out nearly £5.5 million of GBB bonuses since inception in over 400 races. If you remember, we kicked off the chase bonus scheme, the GBB plus £30,000 bonus for chasers, around about this time last year, roughly about a year ago. And we've now managed to pay £435,000 in 18 races. And it's also meant that the thing that we designed it to do, which was to create more opportunities for British breds to win races and pay bonuses and put more of our British horses into chases, it's really working. There's some metrics behind that which I can probably show you later. If you look at the prize money for the races won as GB bonuses, it's under £7,000 prize money. If you look at the amount of bonuses attached to that prize money, it's about 13,000 on average. So basically, if you win, on average, if you win a national hunt race with your GBB filly, you'll get double that in the bonus. It's transformation, isn't it? It makes a massive difference. And then there's lots of fantastic horses that are up there. So there's leading GBV mares. I'm not going to read all this for you. Not sure if you can read them either. But suffice it to say, there's been a lot of really good horses put through this system. A lot of multiple winners. Lots of horses rated 130, 140, 150. It's starting to build the reputation of both the scheme and the horses coming through the scheme. And of course, these horses then get back into the system and become our elite mares of the future as well. So it's that virtuous circle I was talking about before. And this is probably, again, how intervention can work. Again, you won't be able to see it, but I'll read it for you. Until we introduced the chase bonus, only 4% of the money going into GBV bonuses was going to chasing mares. That has jumped to 12% since we put the money up to 30,000. Now, obviously, a part of that is it's just more money, so it's going to increase the percentage. But another large part of that is just being a good incentivisation to get our mares tested over fences, which I think can only be good for us long term. Okay, so that's GBV. What else have we been doing? Covered GBV. The other thing that we've become, I would say, curious and passionate about is wherever we look at the data, there is nothing wrong with British bred horses. British bred horses, given equal opportunity, will perform well on the track. Just a bit of an anecdote. We did some work with Dave Futter in Norton, and Dave, as you know probably, is very keen on getting his 2-year-olds into training, into the system, and through and racing early. He tracks all of the horses that get sold as 2-year-olds from Yorton and then end up in France. And those horses, British breds, perform incredibly well on French tracks when they're exposed to the French training regime of early development, getting your horses broken in early, getting them jumping early. They perform really well. It's a really interesting test case to show that there's nothing inherently wrong with our British breds, given the right development opportunities, given the right sort of early introduction to the art of jumping, they perform extremely well. What we haven't had historically in this country is many routes or opportunities, or indeed a culture for those horses to be broken in relatively early, to be brought along gently, and to be taught to jump at an early age. And so what we've been trying to work on with BHA, been tremendously helpful, and the racing sort of community in general, is to try and ensure that there are opportunities for the right type of horse. Of course, this will not suit every animal, but for the right sort of horse to get into the system early, to learn to jump, and to be gradually built up so that at the age of 3 or the age of 4, they can perform on the track. Our view is that route and that pathway is an incredibly important thing to enable us to catch up with what at the moment, if we're being honest, is we're being outperformed by French and Irish breds on the track at the moment. We can't deny it. We can't bury our heads in the sand. We've got to look at why and do something about it. And we believe providing stronger early development pathways for our British breds will help close that performance gap. And we're working hard on that. The Elite Mare scheme I'm not going to cover in any detail because Colm has been working very hard along with Rob to get more men into the scheme and to redesign it so it can be even more effective. So I'm not going to steal Colm's thunder on that, particularly as he's done all the work. That'll be with me. And then we are also very keen to work together with other people who are like-minded. So, for example, Paul Miller, who's the new Chief Executive of the Point to Point Association, I think has got some very good progressive ideas about ensuring that racing and point-to-pointing work together and support each other. One example of that is he's worked with various people to build up a new 4- and 5-year-old maiden series to provide bonuses for British horses to go through the system and then come into British racing. And that's just another example where we try and support those initiatives, get alongside him and help navigate any new initiative through the mire of racing politics, which I'm sure you all recognise is not very easy at times. And then Stuart talked to you, I think, very articulately about the Mayor's programme. I still find this amazing, but the Mayor's programme comes under attack every year, whether it's in the press or on television or behind the scenes. Some people still do not like Mayor's races. They do not like the Mayor's programme, and the poster child that comes under attack is always the races at Cheltenham Festival. I think we're going to have to get used to the annual whinge fest about having races for mayors at Cheltenham, but people like Stuart, myself, lots of other people on the National Committee, lots of other people on the Jumping Pattern Committee are working really hard to try and hold the tie back and preserve the mayor's programme, of which obviously the races at Cheltenham are the sort of apex. My strong view is you start taking the apex away, then things start to crumble. I think you've seen 15 years of fantastic work by racing and the BHA to build up a mayor's programme. I think the last thing we need to do is start taking the bricks out of the wall again. I think it's stupid. Yeah? We are lobbying very hard as a national committee to preserve that. I think Stuart would probably agree that as a committee we've been quite influential in, vocal and influential in stopping some of these thoughts getting too far down the track. But we are going to have to do that every year because it's going to come under attack every year, I guarantee, I'm afraid. But I think it's important that we continue to support it. And then looking to the future, right, so that was a bit of a review on what's been going on sort of headline level over the past year. Looking to the future, there is a group that's been founded about a year ago called the High Quality Horse Group. This has been set up by the BHA to look into why there has been a gradual tailing off of the number of quality horses bred, trained and owned here in the UK. I mean, if you just look at numbers, the number of 130 plus jumps horses has been in steady decline, and we have to do something about that. I'm on that group. Lots of people in the National Committee have been supporting the work of that group. It's one of these rare things in racing where there is a group of like-minded people coming together to solve a problem without all the racing politics. So it's a good opportunity for us to try and get recommendations and ideas through the system. And some of the things I've already talked to you about, we got the support of the High Quality Horse Group, and that made it much easier to get the funding at the levy board to get racing to approve it. So I think it's an important group and I want to keep supporting it. The thing that is worrying me beyond everything else is I think the economics of being a national breeder at the moment are, in my view anyway, under more pressure than they've ever been. I've only been a breeder for 6-7 years, but I have looked back at some of the statistics around what breeders used to get paid for their stock, what it used to cost to breed a racehorse. And if you look at the economics of it, the amount of money being paid for British stock versus a decade ago hardly moved, which means in real terms it's going down. And then if you look at the cost of production over the last decade, that's gone up, right? And so you put those two things together, we don't get paid the right amount of money for our product, and the cost of producing our product is going up. That is putting, I think, a really, I would say, unsustainable squeeze on British breeders. So all of the things that we're doing in that virtuous circle, I think, help. My worry about that is that they're quite long term, right? As in an elite mare scheme, take that as an example. It's a great idea. I think it's super helpful. But if someone goes and buys an elite mare today, it's 6, 7, 8 years before that horse hits the track and before that sort of backflushes to create sort of that positive aura around the mare. It's a good idea, we should keep it going, we should keep investing in it, but it doesn't solve next year's economic woes, right? So there's lots of things that we're doing which I think are long-term, sensible, coherent, strategically right, but I worry about what I call mind the gap, which is all these things that pay off in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years' time. They're great and they're important, and they help us sustain the industry, but I think there's a real economic squeeze. We're not sitting on our backsides just sort of scratching our heads wondering what to do. We have been very proactive in going out to the racing world basically and saying, we are under huge economic pressure. If you don't support us with some of those economic pressures, the supply chain for horses starts to go down. If the supply chain for horses starts to go down, you get less races. You get less races, you get less levy. You get less levy, you get less races. You get less races, and you get this horrendous vicious circle. Now, I would say our chairman, Philip Newton, has done a great job in lobbying. I think a number of us are supporting him in that, but at the moment we still do not have any significant increase in funding for the breeding sector. I think we're going to have to keep pushing until we do get there. I didn't want that to be unsaid. I do not have solutions today. I just don't. I don't have a sort of magic money tree that I can draw down on. But I can promise you that we understand. Okay? Most of the people in the National Committee are breeders. We understand, and we have to do something about it. So just to recognise that. We're working on a long-term strategy for the breeding industry. That obviously includes national hunts. That's a little bit back to the virtuous circle I was talking about before, but there are other things that I think we need to do. I will keep members updated on that through forums like this. And I think it's critical while we're seeking new investment, new money, that sort of mind the gap funding, that we don't take it from things that are already working. Right, so things like the Elite Mayor Scheme, or the Great British Bonus Scheme, or other things that we're supporting. I don't want to sort of have this idea that we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. I just don't think that's a good idea. I think we need new cash and new money, and we need to build on what we've got rather than take money from something that's working and putting it into something that's new and innovative. I think that'd be a mistake. That was pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm going to be around all day. Please, if there's something bothering you, or you want clarification on, or you're not happy with, please either ask us at the end of the session, or come and buttonhole me. Or if there's something you really like and you want me to do more of, you can tell me that as well. But I'm anticipating that there's pressure on you guys at the moment, so you're going to want to let me know what else you think I might be able to do to support. Okay?
I think there was a question from Jackie.
Yeah, I was just interested to know who's whinging about the mayor's races.
I think it's mostly, Jackie, coming from pundits and commentators and media people, right? And so you could, on the one hand, say, oh, well, it doesn't matter, but actually, people in racing are very sensitive to that, aren't they? And if it gets onto the Racing Post, or it gets on Racing TV, or it gets on ITV, people are very sensitive. Can be quite thin-skinned about these things and think, oh, well, someone's having a whinge and a moan, therefore need to change. So I think it's mostly coming from pundits.
Yes.
There's sometimes a little bit coming from bookmakers, as in the races, historically anyway, haven't always been the strongest from betting turnover, but interestingly, that's improving and increasing. I think people get more used to the idea of mares races. And then there's just like random people like to whinge on it. but I think mostly it's racing commentators and pundits is the real pressure.
Get it out there in the press.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
On behalf of them, I'd say that, it's TV. It makes a bit of a topic of conversation, and that always happens where I'll tell them, why are we doing this, why are we doing that, and people want to be part of a debate, whether they have the right materials, the right understanding behind them to know everything. That's under question.
Yeah.
But it's always going to spark a
Yeah.
lively.
And I think it's important for us to recognise it's not black and white, is it, right? So there are horses where probably people would like to see them running, the Lossy Mares, the Honeysuckles, etc. It's not black and white that there's one true way and one way that's rubbish. There's nuance in the debate, isn't there? But I firmly believe, on balance, having a mares programme with an apex at Cheltenham is super helpful. And the idea that we should change the whole programme because once in a while a horse that may be competitive in the champion. I've got to remember Lossy Mouth got beat by State Man and by Constitutional last year, didn't she? So
The quality of
it
mares
wasn't
in
guaranteed.
those races is going up and up and up.
Yes,
all the
exactly.
time.
And this is my key argument, actually, Jackie. Right? If you go back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, the last mare to win the Champion Hurdle was Flaky Dove in 1994. Suddenly we put a mares programme in, and we've got Epitons, we've got Annie Power, we've got, come on, help me, Stuart, Honeysuckle, Golden Ace. We've suddenly got mare after mare after mare after mare winning. Now, I don't think that's coincidence. I think that's a mares programme that encourages good mares to go into training, encourages owners to have good mares, and lo and behold, some of them get to Champion Hurdle class. You take the whole system out, you won't get the mares. I mean, we used to just not have the mares. So. Yeah.
I would also point out that the race at Cheltenham for mares is 2.5 miles, and the Champions
Yes.
Hurdle is 2.
Yes.
Which for many horses is a material difference.
It's another key argument, isn't it? Now they've moved it onto the Friday, isn't
Thursday.
it? Thursday. It'll be a different course as well, which is probably even more stamina, isn't it?
At the risk of being boring, I totally support everything you said. I actually wonder why we give bonuses, GBB, to mares that have been sent to Ireland and France, which seems to be, if the budget's under pressure, and we're trying to support British breeding, let's not do that. And what would be transformational for a breeder is if you could give it to the geldings as well as to the fillies, but what you mustn't let is the flat to steal all our money.
Look, I don't disagree with anything you've just said. Getting the amount of money we'd require to get geldings into the system, we need multi-million pounds more. And that is very challenging, Robert, at the moment, I'd say. In terms of moving...
Relieve the economic pressure we were discussing earlier.
Yes, I know. Sorry, I sort of characterised that wrongly. I agree with you. Trying to get that additional funding, because to get additional funding for something like GBB, you've got to go through the commercial committee of the BHA, you've got to go through all of the thoroughbred group, you've got to get the levy board on side. I mean, you know this probably as well, if not better than I do, right? And
we have great confidence in your ability to persuade.
Thank you. It's hard. So I will continue to drive that type of agenda because I think it's critical. I think we've got to get people in racing to fully understand just under how much pressure the breeding sector is, particularly the national breeding sector is, and then maybe we can get the funding upped as well.
What do you feel about giving bonuses to mares who've been visiting France and Ireland? I know it's only 50%, but it doesn't seem. And I know that statistically, the British bred ones haven't done brilliantly in the last 2 or 3 years at Cheltenham. We're talking about horses who were bred 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Indeed, yeah.
Since then, the quality of stallions in the UK has risen dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years.
Look, I'm incredibly confident that given time, the wheel's going to turn and we'll see a lot of British champion racehorses in the not too distant future because of all the things that we've been doing. To your point, you know, significantly more elite mares, significantly better stallions available, lots of opportunities for them to race. We do have a bit of a sort of fashion problem at the moment, don't we? In that the British, you know, GB Suffolk is not particularly fashionable for the big owners and the big trainers. There's a bit of chicken and egg here. I think we've got to see success on the track for that fashion wheel to turn. I think that's probably actually our biggest problem. But I do fundamentally agree that at some point we've got to think about how do we queer the pitch even more towards the British bred. The big argument against it, Robert, is, and we have to study this, I think, and get more accurate about it, the big argument against it at the moment is genetic diversity. If you drive the pool down to too narrow a base, you've got a genetic diversity problem, and it's something that we're doing as a TBA across the whole thoroughbred sector to look at the sort of genetic diversity of the breed, which we know is declining, and we're worried about, but we haven't got enough data to know how worried we should be, so we're going to basically spend a bit more time and money looking at that. Right, I'm going to cut there and hand over to Colm.
Yes, we touched on the elite national mare scheme, so now over to Colm a bit more.
Great, well, look, thank you. And I have to say, I am actually delighted to be part of the TBA, in particular honoured to be asked to help Simon and Rob and the team think about how we could improve the elite mare scheme. Sorry, I will. Sorry, I'm very softly spoken. I have strong opinions, but I don't say them very loudly. For those of you who don't know me, and many of you probably don't, I've been an owner for 20 years. I started breeding 8, 9 years ago, in part because I had a very nice filly, or at least had a very nice page who wasn't a racehorse. So I turned her into being a broodmare because I thought the page would stand its test in time, and I'm pleased to say it did. She ran here actually first in a bumper. She was second. She didn't train on for me, but she since won twice, which proves that you're better looking and smart. And I'm also here because actually as an owner at the time, when the French 3-year-old prices went through the roof, I realized we needed another channel. You couldn't be an owner in the UK and rely on actually access to the Irish horses, access to the French horses. You needed a British system, and there wasn't actually a really active British system, which is why we are going through all of this. And I'm part of the TBA actually, frankly, because I think we need to reinvigorate British racing, and I believe that starts at the breeders. I'm going to go back to Simon's virtuous circle, because I think it is not only the diagram that we use with stakeholders in racing to explain why we're doing what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, but also as I looked at it on the flight last night, completely by coincidence, if you look at the first words on the page, it says elite mare, and you look at the last word on the page, it says elite mare. So that's where the virtual circle begins and starts and ends.
You say that's coincidence or genius?
There's a thin line between.
It is coincidence, by the way.
No, I think it is, but I think it speaks to what we're trying to achieve. I'm very analytical and I'm financial by nature, so one of the things I'm trying to bring to this is a little bit more rigor in terms of how we can improve the funding that we have, because the funding is not enough to go around, but we can use it more effectively. I think you can tell from this chart, the scheme is working. It's a really, really good scheme. We have grown the pool substantially. We have actually a really good base of progeny. but we're still at a substantial disadvantage. We are relative to the French and the Irish 14% only of the combined band of jumping brood mares. And I think the elite mare scheme is a critical part of addressing this. Not just the quantity question, because we have to grow, but also the quality question that Simon alluded to. I think one of the things that has been missing in the scheme, which I think we can hopefully help with, is the quality of the progeny that we produce. So where are we today? We have a small scheme that has actually a very big impact. The current budget for this year is only £200,000. You look at Arcana this week, that is a drop in the ocean. So where are we today? We have a small scheme that has a very big impact. Our budget this year is 200,000. We haven't spent it all, although we've spent the majority of it. And you only have to look at the money that's been spent in the ring in France this week to tell you how small or relative proportion that is of the money available in the industry. Our current scheme basically has a £4,500 grant for category 1 mares. It has a £3,500 grant for category 2 mares and a £2,500 grant for category 3. You cannot use more than double the grant value, which, as I'll come on to, I think has been a restriction in the scheme. And we have stallion qualifying, which I think works quite well and we will address over time, but I don't think is the immediate issue. As I've said, is it going up?
Okay. This is multitasking at the highest order, Colm, microphone and
a good tempo.
So I can do that from the pad. So one of the things that I've been looking at as I've come into the TVA and particularly looked at the EMS is we have had a scheme that has solved a historical problem around quantity and incentivization and funding, but it has not been super analytical, in part because the lead time and the lag in terms of getting progeny to the racecourse, as we all know, is 6-7 years. So we haven't actually historically tracked the data. We have now become much more analytical. We are looking to use our funding better, and as a result of that, we have much better support from the stakeholders, and particularly in the levy board. If you look at the left-hand side, what does the analysis imply historically? It says this is a critical focus area because of the disadvantage we have. It says that we have a massive economic multiplier, so the £200,000 that we apply through the scheme every year has a much bigger impact in British racing than anyone would expect. That is, as Simon alluded to, genuinely respected and understood through the system of British racing. The number of elite broodmares, so those that we classify over 130, has doubled from 150 to nearly 300 today. And we've also now augmented that pool by adding 57 category B mares. So those are mares who qualify on the basis of the racing progeny as opposed to their own racing band. But if you look at the right-hand side in terms of how you take this platform, which is a very successful platform, and make it better and more effective, there's a couple of things to highlight. The first is our utilization rate, i.e. the number of mares within the eligible pool that actually use the scheme is actually only 37%. So if there's a singular one thing that we could do to change the effectiveness of the EMS, it would be better knowledge, better understanding, better usage of the scheme. We all accept there are going to be mares who will go outside the scheme. There will be mares who go to Nathaniel. There will be mares who go to France. But it shouldn't be 60% of the broodmare pool in the UK. So utilization can absolutely increase. The second thing we can do, and I feel this is, I guess, in a way, going back to where I started, where I feel strongly about this and why I got into it, I don't think the connectivity between breeding and racing is strong enough. We don't actually track the progeny in the EMS, or have not historically tracked the progeny in the EMS, in terms of when they get to the racetrack, how they develop as racehorses, and what their OR is. And that's why I think category B is so important. We have relied historically on the idea that if the mare was a great race mare, the progeny would be really good. But we haven't tested it. We're now testing it. And I think as a result, over time, we can not only grow the scheme, we can not only increase the grants available to you as breeders, but I personally would like to bring in the concept that you should be rewarded when your progeny gets to track. And when your progeny is successful on track, you should be rewarded again. I think genuinely, the way I think about this, and Simon and I have debated this a lot, the scheme that was built was a great scheme, but it was solving a problem that we had at the time it was built. We now have a different problem or a different series of problems in racing, and we have enough support from the levy board and from the stakeholders in racing to grow the scheme to address the problems that face us going forward. So, gosh, sorry, Rob, I'm useless at this. There you go. So, to give you an example, when I said we haven't historically done any analysis, and I apologize, you're not going to be able to read this. These are what are called correlation charts. So if you're a nerdy finance person like me, you try to track cause and effect. And what these charts do is effectively they take on the left-hand side of any axis the quality of the mare, and on the right-hand, sorry, on the bottom axis the quality of the mare, and the left-hand side the quality of the progeny. And simply put, if you look at the right-hand side of the page, a line that goes up from the bottom left to the top right tells you that there is a correlation, i.e. the better the mare, the better the progeny. And the right-hand side does what you would expect. So it basically says if you take all 120 rated progeny that have been in the scheme over the last 3 years, we've gone back obviously in crop size because of the lag, it says once the mare is over 120, the progeny will be better, the better the mare. Please interrupt me, sorry, if this is on the left-hand side, however, we've gone to 140. So we've said, if you look at the progeny that is rated 140 that's come out of the scheme, can you draw a direct correlation to the quality of the mare? And the answer is no, you can't. So simply put, if a mare is a category 2 mare, she could produce good progeny. But a category 3 mare can produce just as good progeny. And the correlation tells you that actually we should expand the scheme, not make it narrow. Can I stop? So I'm not explaining that very well.
No, I think that's fine.
So there's 3 messages from this chart. The first is absolutely high quality mares produce better progeny. But once you go above a certain level of the mare, it doesn't get any better. In fact, it actually reverses. So we should not be fixated on having category 1 mares. We should be encouraging people to breed from category 2 and category 3 mares because they are just as likely to produce better progeny and get to the track. The second message is, and you can't see this at all on the second chart on the right hand side, is a very high proportion of the performing progeny in those 3 crops came from category B. So it's sort of a bit obvious really, but if a mare has produced good progeny, irrespective of her racing OR, she will more likely produce better progeny. And we have not encouraged that sufficiently in the scheme, which is part of the reason why we increased the band in category B. And the third message, I think, from this page is not enough of the EMS crop are getting to the racecourse. And if there's one thing we can do in addition to helping all of you as breeders and increasing the funding in the EMS scheme and available to you, it's then creating the connection and the reward system to get to the track. So, given where we are, given the platform we have, which I actually think is a great platform, but given the challenges that we have in British racing, what can we do? The first is I think we can now focus on new problems. We can focus on creating the connectivity between breeding and racing, and we have great support to do that. Simon's alluded to it already. The levy board have been super supportive, in particular because we've become a little bit more analytical, a little bit more nerdy, sorry, and because we're trying to build the circular system, and we have a lot of funding. The funding model has increased significantly. We have 2 significant weaknesses in the program. The first is we have had a artificial segregation between category 2 and category 3 in the banding, which actually has no historical or analytical justification. if you have a Category 3 mare, there's no reason why you should have been getting £1,000 less a year. The second is that we had a cap which was basically forcing breeders who were economically pressurized to go to the cheaper stallions. There was almost an artificial structure in the system that basically said if you had a Category 3 mare, you were capped at X amount of pounds for the stallion, but the stallion pool is actually fine. We have a broad stallion pool, so let's make the stallion pool more available to people. So that's why we increased the cap. So if I could just take you through this page, what have we done and what are we going to change for 2006? There are three things I think most importantly. The first is with the support that we've had from the levy board, we have a significantly increased budget. We are going to increase the grants. We're going to increase the grants for Category 1 by 11% to £5,000. There is an argument that we cannot actually genuinely incentivize change in Category 1. The owners of Category mares will probably do what they want to do. We are going to merge Categories 2 and 3 so that we remove what I think is an artificial segregation. We're going to increase the grant in Category 2 to £4,000. So that means if you had a Category 2 mare this year, next year that will go up 14%, which we hope helps a little bit with economic pressures. And if you had a Category 3 mare, you actually will have a 60% increase in your grant. And again, I go back and say, with the thanks to the levy board who've recognised the success of this scheme and made this funding available. And we have changed the double grant cap to a triple grant cap, so that irrespective of what level you are, you will have access to many more stallions. And we have the support, obviously, of many of the stallion owners to support the scheme. You can see that in the charts. We think that makes a big difference. We're not trying to, the scheme historically has artificially, for different reasons, pushed people into making breeding decisions if they were economically pressurized. What we're trying to do is effectively remove those restrictions so that irrespective of where your mare stands, as long as you're in the categories, you actually can afford to go to many more stallions. And the last piece we're going to do over time is we're going to look at awards that effectively reward the quality of the progeny, so that when you get to the racetrack, you get rewarded again. So very simply, if I finish, on the left-hand side, we have a 5-point plan for the next number of years. The first is increased utilization. 30%, 37% is not good enough. But we require your support in terms of word of mouth and people understanding how the scheme works to improve that. The second is we want to reward and redefine what success means. So success means, yes, having a healthy foal and a foal you can sell, but it also means getting your progeny to the track at a point in time. We want to improve quality and affordability, so allow everybody to trade up. We think the new design of the scheme helps people trade up. We want to support and redefine stallion quality, which is work in progress, and we want to continuously test. Rob and I in particular, and Rob, thank you, we want to go back and look at the data. We want to see how we can get better. We'd like your feedback in terms of how we can get better in refining the scheme, and we want to use the money better. We've got a significant increase in funding, and we'd like to be able to spend that more effectively. And I think I'd just finish off by saying we have significant support for the scheme. The stakeholders in racing, and particularly the levy board, really want to contribute, and they have. If you're using the scheme, thank you. We appreciate the support. If you're not using it, hopefully you can see the advantages and the increased economics. And please spread the word. Above all, we all recognise the challenges, and we're very focused on trying to make things better.
On the widening of the availability of stallions.
Yes.
In short, does that mean I can use Golden Hall next year?
I'm going to take that one. So, yeah, I mean, one of the things we wanted to do was to make sure that, within reason, because it's levy board money, but I'm going to give you the quick answer, which is no, not at the moment, right? So we did talk to Simon and Jane. We did explain how the scheme was going to be redone. We expressed the hope that this would enable Golden Horn to come into the scheme. This year they've chosen not to. I mean, and that's a commercial decision for them, isn't it? I can only, and Colm and Rob and the TBA can only design a scheme that allows these stallions to go in. Previous scheme he couldn't get in, right, because of the cap. This scheme he could get in, but they've chosen not to enter into this year. So the short answer is no. I'd be hopeful in the future that maybe things would change.
So that's about economics and how much they're not going to discount because
You sort of have to ask them, I think. But I mean, I had assumed that with the scheme design that we made, it would be a strong incentive to put him into the scheme. I think that, you know, he's very popular, he's a very good stallion, and maybe they feel that it's not necessary to put him into the scheme to be successful, but I don't really want to speak for them, that's a bit out of turn.
I think where I was going was the ability, not only him, I just focused on that because it's the obvious question, is just to be able to, you talked about expanding, so could you actually choose a stallion completely off the list? See the moon or something mad that you know we could all use and know that would improve.
We would get almost no support from that because
this is all pushback from the other side.
Yeah, we would get a lot of pushback. Sometimes from the national breeding community themselves. Sometimes because obviously they don't particularly want to see flat horses coming into the scheme, but also this sort of we have to write parameters that give us some financial control, right? And if we ended up saying it's a free for all, we would blow the budget big time probably, and then we'd get a lot of hot water with the levy board. At the moment we've got the levy board very supportive, we report back to them, they like what we do, we give them KPIs, we deliver on our promises. It would be so much harder for us to control that narrative if we just had a free-for-all.
Well, we also can't control the budget. Yeah. So one of the things that's quite important for the levy board is we say, please can we have more money? This is why it's analytically justified. They're supportive to give us it, but if we blow through the budget, we damage our credibility. But one of the things I was really struck by is if you look at the list of the stallions and the pricing, and I hadn't really done this previously, which shame on me, when you look at what we've done in terms of tripling the cap from the double, it massively increases the availability of stallions. So I appreciate you don't have full flexibility, but I think as a category 2 now owner, you probably have triple the availability of stallions that you had before.
Yeah, if you go back 2 years, you know, the category 3 mare, you had a £2,000 grant and a double cap, therefore the maximum you could utilise against a £4,000 stallion. And of course, there's good stallions in this country at that money, but anything beyond that was beyond you. Now, that same mare can access a stallion up to £12,000 if they put them in the scheme.
And we pay the balance.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Which we could have done before, or not at all.
Well, before you didn't get any voucher if it was beyond a certain level.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So look, I mean, this again, right? I think this, and Colm and I and Rob are very, very much aware of this. We want to keep iterating and improving the scheme year on year on year. We have to do it at a pace that racing will accept, and we have to do it in a way that when we go back for extra money, we can justify that it's worked, and then we build and we build and we build.
I've just got one more question for you then.
Yeah.
What percentage of elite mares are actually using the scheme at the moment?
37%.
37. And do you see that the higher end or across?
No, that's low. So the historical number for the last 5 years has been 40, and it's gone down to 37% last year, which we believe is most. So we obviously have a golden horn and annual question. Leaving aside the golden horn and annual question, we think the differential from the 40 down to the 37 is economic pressures. That just breeders decided last year not to breed. But we should be, the utilisation should be much higher because the number using golden horn and Nathaniel and the number going to France and Ireland should be X%, but it's not 63%.
Is there something that
we're
we're
missing?
missing?
Please, yeah.
Is there something that we're missing?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Something in your head that
We struggle with this a little bit. Like given the attractiveness of the scheme, 37% is a low utilisation rate.
I think speaking on behalf of the TDA National Committee as well, we are never going to stop those top mares wanting to go overseas to visit stallions. the best mares will go where they want. Really, we're trying to help the mediocre breeder improve the quality of their stock. So this elite mare scheme is critical for that medium breeder to hopefully improve their stock and stay in England. But we would all love Golden Horn to be on it. And if any of you have that issue as well, I think it is important for us all to get that across to Simon and Jane one day. We are all trying our absolute best for it, but it's massive help with these, with category 2 and 3 joining together and creating a much bigger lump sum for us breeders to be able to just cut our nomination fees, which, you know, any help we need as breeders in this respect is helpful.
I mean, you know, on the positive side, there will now be a lot of really good stallions in this country that you can breed to for nothing in terms of a nomination fee. There's a lot of mares that now come into this scheme that can access a good stallion basically free of charge. So I think it's a good step. I would long term like to see even wider pool of stallions. I'd love to get, you know, all of the stallions up to that cap into the scheme. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Thank you.
Sorry, do you know how many elite British brood mares there are? Not percentage, but the actual number.
350 something. Yeah,
351.
351. Yeah. Which was, you know, 150 10 years ago. So I mean, the scheme is driving the right behaviour, which is why we get levy board support. But to Colin's point, we've got to get the utilisation up as well, and then we'll get lots of really top quality GB suffix horses on the track, which will lead to good performance, which will lead to better reputation, which will lead to us being paid for what we produce. Hopefully.
I congratulate you on the work you're doing and what you've explained, but I suspect, I don't know if I'll live long enough, but a bigger threat is, you alluded to earlier, about the diversity of the genetics of the breed as a whole. Like I've got a mare, I've bred from it, the grandam produced 50 winners. But we haven't managed to produce one over there yet, but the fact that she did that, and I thought she was worth breeding from, and I think, you know, a family can be dormant in a while for winners and then produce a good horse. So I think that diversity is an important aspect of all this.
Yes, and we would agree. It's back to the challenge that Robert put into the room about can we start to migrate more towards full GB bred. I think we'd like to, but we really need to understand the genetic implications of that before we start to drive it too hard. And we are. Naomi, do you want to talk very, very briefly about the thing that we're undertaking this year around genetics?
Okay, I'm going to do this very quickly because Jamie is waiting on Zoom. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Naomi and I'm the new CEO of TBA. We are going to be running a pilot project next year regarding
and the official time for race 1,
and
12 o'clock.
We're going to be
I'd like to wish everybody an enjoyable, hopefully a profitable afternoon's racing. First race time, 12 o'clock.
Done in other rare breed native horse species that's come out of the University of Nottingham amongst other places, which has allowed people like the Cleveland Bay, the Eriskay Pony Society, they have very, very small breeding populations, and by looking at the genetic diversity and about how those breeds are bred, it has allowed them to make sure that the longevity of the species, of the breed, is guaranteed via looking after the genetic diversity. So we undertaking this pilot study in the first part of 2026 with a small number of studs to start with to test the system, but we're really much hoping that we will be able to roll this system out to breeders more widely, and what that would allow you to do is to put in your mare with a number of stallions to see whether this is a red, definitely not advised mating, orange, okay, but maybe think about something different, or green, yes, go ahead from a genetic diversity perspective. So the TVA will be sending out quite a lot more information about this, but we're working pretty hard on it at the moment, and Victoria, who looks after equine health and welfare for us, is really driving that along with James Crocus, who's our vet on the board.
Thank you very much. We have Jamie Snowden patiently waiting. He was there. Well, he's back. Obviously, the power technology, that we hope that he can hear us. We've got the audio walking through. But Jamie, if you can, please do your best French for us as you're returning back from France to England.
Hi Jess, yeah, thanks for having me on. Sorry about this, I couldn't be there. We've got 2 runners at Warwick, but just on the way back from the sales, so apologies about this.
Brilliant, well we can hear you loud and clear, so fabulous, and you're the perfect trainer for us to introduce into this forum after the success you've had with mares, and we've gone through the last sort of 10, 15 years, thanks to the panel here, but we want to hear from your perspective, you know, what it is like on the ground, and with the increase in mares races, how has the gender balance in the yard, from your perspective, adjusted, and how has it sort of altered what you look at now in 2025 and what your yard, how it reflects in your yard?
Well, I think the first thing to say is when I started training, I could only really afford mares when I was going to the sales. And I would buy mares, the programme wasn't really in place for them, but a lot of people didn't buy them, so I could afford them. And we ended up having a bit of success with them. But now, mares are going as much as geldings at the sales because the mares programme is so good in England. The mares bumper programme, the mares hurdle programme is excellent. I think the ability to get decent mares over fences, probably the programme doesn't necessarily support them in the early stages of their career when they go chasing. There are very chases on offer, just like the race that closes today up at Market Race, and there's only 5 entries at the moment. I haven't seen what there are since I've been on the call, but when I last looked, there are only 5 entered, and they're all, you know, rated at 40 plus, which is a real boost for the programme. But the that I think it lacks is the ability to get decent mares to transfer from novice hurdle chases, which I'm sure the programme will look at in the future, because we want mares, in my opinion, to go through the whole system and not come out of it before they go chasing.
And how well received is the prospect of purchasing a mare? I know you said that was, in the early days that was what you could afford, but now you've got a different breadth and strength of ownership. Trying to go out and buy horses now, is this as much interest in buying mares because of the programme that we have and the Elite Mare scheme? Is the enthusiasm to buy mares there from your owners?
Yes, certainly when it comes to the Great British Promise. Perhaps less so from an owner's point of view about the Elite Mare scheme, to be honest with you. That's something that people don't come at me knocking on the doors and come on, let's go and do it because there's this Elite Mare scheme. It's more for the GBB.
And how do you think we go along and transfer that? Try and sort of understand how that can be the next step. I suppose education around it, or is just the interest is just a race and breeding is very separate for most owners.
I think breeding is quite separate for a lot of owners. I think a lot of owners come into it to race, and if the opportunity to breed ends up being then so much, so, you know, the bonus as it were. But I don't think a lot of my owners come to it wanting to breed. I think breeders breed, I think, on his own, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've obviously had a lot of mares from different backgrounds. You look at Anything for Love, who was a syndicate, Holly Grove Cha-Cha, very notable syndicate, Hot to Trot, that are incentivised to race thanks to the breeders, and you wear it well and own a breeder. But they all became Grade 2 winners from different pathways. But were there any other commonalities between the trio that sort of helped them on their way to become what they were from their backgrounds?
Yes, the similarity is that they are leased horses. They are owned by breeders and leased to clubs and syndicates. So the breeder wants to get the black type into them and then have them back as a broodmare later on. I think so that in my view is being led by breeders. You know, I suppose from the TBA's point of view, you would like to get more people into breeding and therefore more owners into the breeding side of it, because the breeders already breed. And I would say from your point of view, you want to try and incentivise owners to become breeders.
And are you seeing an improvement in the standard of mare you are training now to say 10 years ago? We looked at the rating system we've discussed here about the rating of mares and the quality versus the quantity of mares in training versus the quality of them. Well, what is the standard of mare that you now have compared to when you started?
Yeah, far superior. Yeah, far superior. There are far better mares. And as I say, you look at that market racing race that closes today. I think we were, even 5 years ago, I think we were third in it with a horse rated 120, and now, you know, the horses you probably need to be 135 plus to be third in it. So I think the quality of mares has definitely gone up, not just in our yard, but in general.
And are you campaigning mares? You touched on this, that owners are looking at GBB races and that's a great incentive. Are you campaigning fillies and mares around the scheme? Is that very much part of your training methods? You look at where they're going to be, you're chasing bonuses?
Without a shadow of a doubt, yes. Sorry team, I just cut out there. I don't know whether you got that.
No, we did, loud and clear. I'm just wondering while we're here if there are any questions for Jamie while we've got him, make sure that everyone's included.
How can we get British trainers to support British breeders? How can we get you guys to buy our stock? You're all trending for France, Irish pointers. Why won't you guys go behind us and actually support us as British breeders?
Well, I think the answer is we want to be buying good mares. You know, so it doesn't really matter where we're buying them from. So we will support them, and I have plenty of people that want to be buying these mares that are GBB, you know, that have the bonus attached to them. There's no doubting that we want to do that. Why are we buying from France and Ireland as well? We want to buy good horses. You know, we're not pigeonholed into only buying British horses to support Britain. We want to buy the best horses, whether they're from France or Ireland or wherever it might be. So we are supporting the British programme, but we're not going to buy British for the sake of buying British when we can buy a better horse from France.
Yeah. And I've had a rant about this at the committee meetings before. A lot of British trainers never go to the British Doncaster sales, and there are plenty of winners out that sale. There are certain elements. Dan Skelton is a classic, and let's be honest, he's the leading British trainer. He always goes to the sales. Alan King does. There's a certain segment of British National Hunt trainers who will try and support the British, and the rest just bugger off to the other sales. It's as simple. They don't even come to have a look to see what's on sale. But at the end of the day, it's not the French breeders and the Irish breeders that are paying the training bills of the British trainers. So I do think, and I've got a real thing about this, I think the British trainers should not necessarily buy if they don't like what they see, but is it that difficult for them to come to the British sales to see what we've got? I know we don't have many British pinhookers for foals, I understand that, but quite frankly, and I have my horses in training with quite a few trainers, some of which do not come to the sales very often, but there are certain top trainers in this country that will support British, but the majority don't even turn up. And
well, I can't speak for other people, but I support the British breeding. I support British mares, but I try and buy quality horses. Whether, as I say, whether they're British, French, or Irish, it's kind of irrelevant to me. The GBB bonus is the one incentive. So if I was buying buying two horses of the similar quality, one being British, one being French, I don't say that I will buy British, but if I was buying two mares of similar calibre and one has the GBB bonus to it, well then it's obvious I'm going to buy that.
Please do.
Okay, so one more question, Jamie. So times have changed dramatically for British trainers. That it seems to be much more popular to have proven horses come to the yards rather than buying store horses at really a more value price. Why do you think that? Well, it's obvious why it is, but how can we persuade you trainers to come and buy the stores at value rather than buying these proven horses that might necessarily not end up as good racehorses?
I think it's very simple. Stills aren't value.
Why do you think that is, Jamie?
I've just been over in France buying yearlings, I just don't think stores are value. You know, we finished, we had a winner at Lingfield on whenever it was, Tuesday, with a £90,000 Irish point-to-point winner, and we beat a horse in a novice hurdle. We beat a horse in second that was a £150,000 store. You know, stores aren't value. That cannot be value. £150,000 for a store, that cannot be value.
Do you buy British foals though, or are they too young? Can you not keep them?
I don't buy foals, I buy yearlings, because I think the value is in the yearlings. So I bought 3 over in France this week. I think the value is in those yearlings.
And what is your minimum criteria when you're looking at a catalogue page that would, you know, strike something off immediately? Is it pedigree? Is it sire? What is your basic?
No, I think they've got to look. They've got the. When I'm looking at it, to be honest with you, when I'm at these sales, it's more about the horse than it is the pedigree, particularly. I'd rather buy a horse that looks like he's going to be a racehorse than the page. I don't buy the page. The page backs up the horse.
But so you would go to a sale and look at everything there.
I look at the horse over the catalogue page. The catalogue page backs up the price that you're going to spend on the horse. We bought a Headman over here, €22,000 Headman. Who's Headman? He's Kingman's son. And the pedigree, it was all flatbred, but the horse was a beautiful horse, and we paid €22,000 for that as a yearling. That would develop into a 3-year-old at the store sales. That, honestly, if it carried on developing how it looked, that would be £150,000 3-year-old. Why pay £150,000 for it as a 3-year-old when you can pay 22 as a yearling in France?
And would you buy from an online sale, or only if you've physically seen the animal?
No, I think you've got to physically see them, especially as yearlings.
What would you change in our sales sector for national hunt breeding? What do you think we could do to make it more prospective for breeders?
Well, I suppose, you know, more yearling sales, really. I mean, Deauville cornered the market there, haven't they?
So do you think that would get broad support, Jamie, from trainers if there was a high quality British yearling sale on? Because obviously you've got your model. Do you think there'll be other people?
I think when it comes to national hunt trainers, we're probably quite set in our ways, and it probably takes a long time to steer the ship in that kind of direction. So I'm sure if you set up a yearling sale, it would. It's taken a while for Yorton to sort of get a little bit of a foothold into it, and I'm sure the same would be for yearlings. It would take a bit of time to do it, but it's certainly something that if I was in the TVA's shoes, I would think about.
And we've got many breeders in the room. What would the reaction to be to that, to sell your horse as a yearling as opposed to a foal?
But technically we do. We've got Goff's January, it's a yearling sale.
Yes.
I don't see trainers there. So we have seen more, you know, canvas national hunt trainers to find out if they'd actually turn up at a sale, because that's it's expensive to prep a yearling as opposed to prepping a foal. So you're adding to the breeder's costs. They're having to keep it a bit longer, which I don't think anyone would complain about if they know that the buyers are going to turn up and buy the stock. And if you spent that money and you put that effort in, and then you rock up and nobody shows up, you know, I don't know, is that a TBA thing or a tax
highlight
thing?
I think it's probably both,
Day
isn't it?
4, if you like, of your October sales as the national yearling sale.
I mean, it's something that I am really worried about, which is where is the market for our British bred stock, whether it's foals, yearlings or stores. So I think we have to work.
Yeah. Has it?
Like it went down by 40% last year, 60%. Like it's literally down to minimum. So we pushed it. We had some very well bred yearlings in there that came over from Bristol, but there was just there's no option.
Jamie's surprised me with what he's saying about my yearlings. I think Jamie's
and
right.
That's why I'm saying we need to canvass. We need to canvass the trainers, because there's no point you guys putting the effort in, us putting the effort in, if then Jamie's the only one that's turning up. He can cherry pick all the best yearlings and then leave.
What he's saying is totally right, and I agree with him. And you've got to get your hands on them earlier, but you need the system obviously to bring them through.
I think that's something we'll take out of this meeting, and we'll try and work out with the sales houses what is the potential market for selling units. It's your point. If you're selling as units stuff, or you've got more risk, you've got more cost. But if you're going to get paid, you might take some money.
The problem is we can never compete with Ireland and France because we're not considered agriculture.
Yeah.
We're a hobby breeders. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
that bit I don't
same
think I can
thing. There's nothing we can do to be competitive on price, whether it's keep or any of those things. It absolutely annihilates you.
Yes, which is back to what I said earlier. I'm really worried about the economics, and anything we can try and do to change those economics, I think will be tremendously helpful. But I don't think government support is going to be the first place that we can go to.
No, and unfortunately, as someone that stands stallions, in Ireland and France, again, they use local stallions,
Yeah.
whereas, no offence to the average British breeder, but, they'll join a due to Golden Horn, a due to Crystal Ocean and that, but it's not the same for the small stallion stud, and if people don't use us, we'll just keep going. Eventually you'll have very few options in the UK for stallions. You'll literally have less than a handful.
Yeah, which is back to the virtuous circle, which I really believe in, that we've got to try and create the mare band, maintain the mare band, but also then incentivise people to use British stallions, which is what the Elite Mare scheme does. But to Colin's point, we want that to be more utilised, more promoted, more money coming into it, so that we can change the dynamics of that. Okay.
I speak on behalf of my fellow national breeders who've just taken foals to sales, and it is really, really tough.
Yes, I know.
I mean, the only thing you can say is now fools breed them for wise men to buy. And I took 7, 1 mare and 6 foals to Doncaster. Sold all, unlike probably not my colleagues that didn't, and half of
We're in the
them
right
went
lane.
home, and 5 went to Ireland. But the overheads now, and I mean, talking to several of my friends, we're just doing it at loss.
Yes,
And
I know.
there's nothing, it's not sustainable.
I know.
We should
That's
just
what
pack
really
up.
worries me.
So it doesn't, all the lovely mare schemes you've got, we're just not going to, we can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
Because we just haven't got the end buyers. Nobody wants to buy any British bred foals. So I think you've got to have an incentive for a trainer, whether the GBB touches on, but there's got to be an incentive. Because, I mean, 20 years ago, won a chase, bred a chase winner, you got 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah.
Robin and Scarlet Knight got £30,000 from Master Oates winning the Gold Cup. And that was real money then. And now we're just poor relation.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, Jackie, but you're asking the breeder to pay again. Another incentive scheme comes out of, usually the breeder is the first pocket it's got to come out of. The GBB is a fantastic incentive, but the breeder has to pay for that too. So at what point does the rest of the industry help everybody? It's not a one thing fixes all, is it?
I agree. What I'm hearing, I understand, I totally agree, there is real economic distress in the national breeding sector in Great Britain.
I did like what Jamie said about the bonus though. If there was some sort of large, if we had to pay a higher fee, from the individual race lanes, you pay a higher fee to get back into the bonus, because the amount of time we're trying to go, we're like, oh, and that's all, and it's you missed out by a day or so, and that's pretty much the world, you can't get any other and expensive, to go towards helping the budgets. Surely there's something that's been said that you're helping trainers from articles, and then stuff arose up.
I think it's got legs. We've just got to make sure that it doesn't have the unintended consequences. No one pays stage 3 bonus and just waits until they believe they've got a race. Also, we've got to get that balance. It's got to be a big penalty to come in late, I think. Otherwise, you'll just get no one buying stage 3. Then the cash flow of the scheme goes down until another year. So this is a very sensitive scheme that the levy board watched very closely. And if we did anything to bugger it up, we could all suffer. So I don't disagree with the idea. I've just got to think through how to make it balanced. Yeah.
The European Breeders' Fund, who I work for, has had a scheme where non-EVF horses, so if they're not by an EVF stallion, have to opt in at various stages, and it's always been a little bit like if you haven't registered your foal or your yearling in time with Weatherby's, then the amount goes up incrementally, and the final stage is if you get to ready to run stage, then it's £12,000 to put a non-EVF sired horse into the scheme.
It's the same concept.
And it's the same concept, and we basically have two options, which are not inexpensive, but we feel that they're pitched at a place where
well balanced.
It's well balanced. So if you'd like something to benchmark it against,
then thank you. Appreciate it. Rob, can we follow up? Thank you. Racing's about to start. I know what.
It is. Unless there's anything else, I think it's a great debate and.